So welcome to our first of a cycle of webinars. So today we will talk about investment strategies specific for startups in Insurtech and Healthtech. And we are very happy to have you all here. I'm Margarida, I'm from Fabricate Startups, and I'm the program manager of Protechting. And before diving into the topics ahead, let me introduce you Protechting. I'm sure that you already heard about it. So Protechting is an open innovation program from Fidelidade, Hospital da Luz and Fosun, and it's organized by Fabricate Startups. On its sixth edition, Protechting is a unique opportunity for startups in the areas of Insurtech, Healthtech, and tech enablers. And here you will gain access to support system, industry insights, mentorship, networking opportunities, and also the select startups will have the opportunity to do a sponsored pilot and be present at Web Summit. So it's a great opportunity, and applications are open now until 8th of September. So please visit the site and apply. And today we have a fantastic lineup here of experts ready to share their insights with us. So throughout this webinar, we encourage you to actively engage with us. If you have any questions about Protechting or any specific topic that we are discussing here today, please don't hesitate to drop them in the chat box. If we can't address them during the webinar, because it's just half an hour, rest assured that we will respond them afterwards. So now let me introduce our guest. We have here Ana Paula Reis that will moderate this conversation. She's co-founder of Bridgewatch and an investor. And we also have the pleasure of hosting Pedro Carlos, partner at Shilling, and João Freire de Andrade, head of Big Start Ventures. Just to wrap up, and remember, I like to remember that the applications are open until September 8th at protechting.com. And next week we will have another webinar dedicated to health tech. So join us. And I would like to hand over the virtual stage to Ana, who will guide us through our conversation with our guests. So Ana.
Thank you, Margarida. Thank you very much, and welcome you all. So let's move forward. We only have 30 minutes. So Insurtech and Healthtech. Pedro, let's start with you. Do you want to please tell us what are the hot topics in Healthtech currently?
Yeah, hi Ana, hi João, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invitation. As across most of the areas, what is really hot is AI, as you may have heard, AI applied. This is not really new. I think in general, one of the trends that we've seen in the last few years is to join the technology part, and AI is one significant one, with the needs of the health system, and in both in coping with the aging of population, so and with the need for more effective healthcare. So in general, what we see is interesting projects joining the needs from the health market, let's call it like that, with the technologies. One of them is, of course, AI, which is a great tool to help the industry become more effective. As we all know, there are scarce resources in some verticals. Of course, not everything can be done artificially, and you need humans. But AI is one of the tools that we are seeing to help on the health tech space, not just on health tech, of course.
Well, so what about Insurtech? What is the really hot now in that area? AI for sure. Anything to add?
Besides AI, right?
Right.
First of all, let me say that it's a great pleasure to be with you here And thanks a lot for Fidelidade for the invitation. So having said that, yeah, no, of course, AI, it's all over the place, but again, trying to give you a little bit more direction. So typically, we look into different nodes of the value chain of the insurance industry. So there's very interesting applications business-wise. Of course, the most invested one, typically till now, of course, we can speak about different momentums in terms of the, let's say, the volume of investment available, but distribution was definitely a topic that many people invested on. And I would say inside distribution, for me, it's very interesting, the embedded reality. So plugging your capacity to sell insurance on the spot, on the moment, where the person needs. And that's definitely something that for sure will going to reduce your cost of acquisition, your CAC, and that's something very hot. Other interesting things that we've seen increasing interest, it's things related, of course, with cyber insurance specifically, and also it's not so, let's say, visible, but there are many operational parts of the value chain that need to be addressed. For example, claims, for example, the underwriting process, for example, even, let's say, one area that's not from mass knowledge, but even from the reinsurance side. So those I would pick as important topics, if not speaking about AI, that I think have applications in all the nodes that I've just mentioned.
Okay, very good. So Pedro, coming back to you again, can you tell us what do VCs look for in general? Well, when they invest in health tech, first in general, and then tell us about Shilling's particular criteria for investing, because we have an audience that is seeking for investment. So how do you view that?
Yeah, I think maybe just briefly on context, Shilling is an early stage investor, but we are not, we enter at the MVP stage. So we don't normally enter at the ideation at the very early stage. We enter a little bit later. Well, trying not to go, well, I'll start with the cliches and maybe then open up a little bit. I mean, the team is a very important part of it. And I think one of the important aspects on how we evaluate teams is on their complementarity. And we always love teams that are not only tech or are not only sales or market driven or just product. I mean, it's good to have different profiles and have some clear leadership. It's not always the case, but that's our ideal case, is to have this complementary aspect. And of course, the market that the project is trying to address, the problem that they're trying to solve, the pain that they are trying to minimize is relevant, because we always like Shilling it doesn't invest in local plays. We only invest in, let's say, ambitious growth kind of projects. So we try to identify the sizing of the market and both from a top-down as also a bottom-up approach, and then we'll try to look at the product itself. I mean, the thing that you're trying to sell to your customers, and how distinctive it is. We always like to look at what are the real benefits versus whatever is already there. We typically like to see order of magnitude improvement, either in cost. If you can do something that the competition is doing 10 times cheaper, it's normally very important. But then again, it's having definite advantages is an important aspect. And I could go on, but I think the three at the early stage, which is I think the stage most of the people here in the audience are interested. It's a mix of team, of the market they're addressing, and the product that they are proposing to that market.
Very good, very good. So, João, what about Big Start Ventures? What are your specific criteria? I mean, in knowing the sector that you are in, how do you differentiate from general investors and VCs in this area?
No, great question. It's very important. Even you as founders ask yourself what the investor can bring besides money. So basically, since we are very focused, like we just do Insurtech, B2B, seed stage in a global level, like we of course we have to, like of course we try to look deeply into what is let's say the fit with this strategy. And when I say the fit, it's like what are adding for the industry, because it's an industry that ourselves we try to know a lot, we try to research a lot. We have very good partners such as Fidelidad that help us navigating the real needs of the industry, and that's of course something that once you look lots of times to that aspect, like it enables us to have a vision if it is possible to different what the company is doing, or the, let's say, the potential of the company. It's a global potential or not, and that's something we definitely try to do. Another interesting thing, it's since we just invest in B2B, we definitely try to shorten that period of time, which for many companies, specifically selling inside the financial sector, but specifically for insurance, it takes time. There's, let's say, typical schedule, and where these type of decisions are that in big insurance companies, it takes time to make sure you are speaking with the right persona, with the right champion inside the company, with the right proposal in the right timing, with the right roadmap. So that's something we always are looking for. What is on the roadmap now, and what we're going to be on the roadmap next, so we can start entering in these points. And then, of course, like there's the regulatory aspect. Many of these startups are tech enablers, and those tech enablers, many times they are even leveraging regulation to make sure like companies will comply with that. But many other times they need a license. Imagine if you are distributing and you need an MGA or something like that, you are subject to have a license. So that's also a couple of waters we try to navigate. Again, what we look for, it's definitely companies that get maturity in this aspect, that have at least the capacity, and we see evidences that what they're doing, it's something that we know that's on the roadmap. We see evidences and early signs of traction. We see that the team got this or knowledge or capacity to acquire that knowledge. And yeah, I think it's pretty much that.
Well, and in terms of having a startup that is for you investment ready, what are the steps that they should take before they come to you?
Again, we are not very picky in terms of the moment where we meet the startup. We try to be early on in the startup. For you to have an idea, there's even moments where we start speaking with startups where they just imagine, a GitHub repository of code, and pretty early in the cycle. It's not the case that we're going to invest on that moment. But we are not very picky on that, and having a dialogue and a constructive dialogue and see what the founder was able to achieve, gathering the team, definition of the product, getting capacity, getting the license, all those nodes and all those steps that you got to do, of course, besides product tech, etc. That's obvious in every vertical. That's something that we like to be investment ready. And then of course we try to adjust. Since we are seed stage, we do a little bit of pre-seed, and we can do pre-series A, so we are in that range. And of course, as you know, valuation ranges a lot in this phase, so an adequate valuation for the stage where we are, it's something definitely that should be a balanced equilibrium to capture the risk or the potential, the risk potential, let's say, this balance between these two features. So definitely, to directly answer your topic, I would say it's very important to know a little bit like being like very conscious of why you are addressing these markets, what are the opportunity or the gap you are trying to bridge, having at least a nice founding team. We typically like teams that can play all the instruments. I mean, like you can't do a startup in scale with that team, but you can do the early developments, rather in business, rather in product definition, rather in technology. That's something we typically look at. Again, of course, having an adequate plan in terms of how much you're raising, for what markets, for with what valuation. Like that's something we always expect to have, let's say a final interesting output. But again, it's not always the case. Startups that we invested that came to us with all these elements in first moment. Like it's a construction.
Mm-hmm. Pedro, I think that João was also referring that the investment ready has a lot to do with the stage of investment. So what is it to you? Can you relate to the stages that you invest? What do you need them to be ready?
Yeah, I think we're pretty much aligned. I fully
You're in the
support
same space.
We're a bit more agnostic. We don't do only health tech or insurtech. We basically do almost everything except for a few verticals. But the investment ready stage, of course, depends a little bit on the project itself. I do agree with João that it's never too early to try, at least, because we typically like to monitor, and of course it depends a little bit on the type of project, but it's always easier for us to evaluate a team that we have been following for a few months, and so never hesitate if you have a chance to talk to a VC or somebody in the VC team, because that will get you in the map, and if you're doing something interesting, it will evolve from there. The point, I mean, if it's pre-seed stage, what we tend to like to see is early pilots and the engagement of the pilot owners with the product. I mean, we typically like to talk with the people that are supposed to be having a problem that this startup is solving. If it's more at the seed stage, and so in the early go-to-market and early product market fit, then we would certainly like to talk with the early customers and understand how passionate they are about the product. Of course, in some cases, it's pretty evident if it's very disruptive. If it's not so disruptive, that adds a lot. In other things that are important for a VC is to understand the long-term vision for the founders. In most, well, I would say more than 50% of the cases, the MVP, the early product, is just a stepping stone, and they have some broader vision with a larger market or a more precise definition, and understanding that, and of course the path that the founders have done before is important for creating a reason to believe that they will be able to build on top of what they are that they have available at the moment that they are talking to us.
Mm-hmm. That was exactly my question. So I'm going to skip that one to you in terms of the long-term perspective that you're looking for. Do you want to add something, João, in terms of the long-term perspective when they come to you, and not only the actual criteria?
Yeah, that's of course not. I don't have a lot to add. Like I think we got the same positioning, and but again, like we, as you know, building a company, especially in early stage, until the moment of an exit, it's a long path. So having this capacity to maintain a healthy relation, constructive relation, it's something we always try to find that, let's say, specific character on the founder. It's very important. And again, like every stage of the company, you need lots of resiliency. Like it's in different stages, it's different types of tests. Like in the beginning, you are doing a lot with very few resources, but even for startups that we got in portfolio with lots of resources, hundreds of millions in resources, like there's a huge challenge, and the management keeping the vision and being resilient in what are the metrics they have to execute to get to the next stage. It's a type of character that we look at the long run to find in once we are speaking with the founders, although it's very difficult. Fortunately, it's something interesting. that we've been finding in people trying to tackle these areas. Like in the beginning, and I see many Portuguese entrepreneurs with that specific quality, although we invest globally. But it's interesting to see that, let's say, not stopping trying the first, let's say, difficulty.
What about the pitch, Pedro? What about the pitch? What is a compelling pitch to you? What is a compelling business plan?
Well, it's always very important to have a clear message and a clear vision of what they're trying to achieve. Of course, it's not always the case that the best entrepreneurs are great communicators, and it takes training. And I guess one thing that we notice is that well-trained and experienced founders do train their pitch. We feel that, and being precise in what you're in what you're trying to achieve. Of course, a pitch is not only one-sided. I mean, you have to be open to questions, and you have to be good at clarifying whatever is missing. Sometimes you do have things that are there on purpose to address questions, and being very capable of answering questions. And especially, this is a little bit more personal. I mean, one of the things I like in pitches, in good pitches, is that I have the feeling that I would like to work with that team in improving. That's something that for VCs is important. If it's sometimes you're too square, you already know everything, and I mean, the only thing that we are 100% sure is that the business will be slightly different than it is in the pitch, because it never is. It never stays stable. And so the measuring how the founders react to our questions, how they address whatever hurdles we put on top is important. But the main thing, going back to your question, is clear message on the various aspects that I mentioned. What is the market? What is the pain? What is the product? And how are they going to address it?
We have here a question on market validation on the pitch. Do you look for market validation on the pitch, Pedro?
We certainly look at market. I mean, sometimes because we're agnostic, we have pitches from areas that we are not specialists in, and this is part of our DD, to go very deep in the market and find the most that we can on the market that is addressed. So
you do your own validation also.
Yeah, we have to. That's part. I mean, at least at our stage and with the tickets that we do have to validate market. We cannot take it for granted. I mean, of course, it's a bit different if we know the founder from some previous endeavor, and we have he will be part of that validation. But we normally go to the stakeholders that we know on that market in Portugal and elsewhere. I mean, it's sometimes, of course, we see startups that are starting from here, but we try to use our network to understand how is it going in, I don't know, Germany or Brazil or in the States, and understanding what is happening in that specific arena.
João, do you recall, I'm not going to ask you who, okay, but do you recall any particular pitch of the thousands that you have probably already heard? One or two that stick in your mind, a couple of characteristics that they have?
You know, I think for me, pitches, like it's just the starting point, right? And it's very different which environment you are talking. Imagine if you are in a competition, in a demo, in something a little bit more public. I assume it's important to have something fluid, a striking message, something that calls the attention of the people. I would say it's quite standard nowadays having a 30 minutes conversation, sometimes via a call like what we are doing for a first assessment. And on that assessment, like you really have to capture the attention of the VC. And that pitch, I would say, that style of pitch, it's the most common one. If it's a startup trying to have a first conversation with the VC, of course, you can be an event, you can book a meeting, you can book a present meeting. But let's suppose a 30 minutes conversation. I'm not speaking about those events where you have to pitch in 10 minutes or 5 minutes that you can get just kind of a teaser, right? It's not the what I recall of very interesting pitches when there's a very, very interesting characteristic, a very strong team, and is able to explain the previous experience, the experience of the other partners. That's a very important thing. Another interesting thing, it's like the size of the opportunity and the fact that they know how to navigate, or they have early evidence. Is like the biggest evidence that we try to validate, of course, and the top one, it's sales, right? If you are selling, someone is buying, someone is putting money, someone is using. That's important. Of course, if you have to do it a little bit earlier, like I'll give you an example of a company that we exited a couple of years ago. Like the traction we got was to assess the quality of the product and the magnitude of the difference what they are doing. And they were B2B, but they've done a free trial completely for free for a B2C segment that were people just using for them to get data and train the model. Then to go. And there's interesting ways that sometimes you can validate some specific, let's say, realities or specific, let's say, advantage of what you're doing in a alternative or a secondary way. Okay. And that's something that at the time we found very, very, very interesting. Then, of course, we always, besides these metrics that I've mentioned, we always try to at the pitch understand a little bit the feasibility of the project, what they have already tested, the pipeline, since it's B2B, the pipeline, the potential list of customers that they already spoke with, the early feedback of those customers, and then of course but again, I think the pitch, it's important it's a structured way. It's tons of let's say resources available online, from Sequoia to every organization gives like what are the basic bullet points you should present in your pitch. And I think it's basically, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's being structured, being able to explain, and again, this is the business relation, not like a showbiz relation. So for me, it's much more important, really trying to, in 30 minutes or more, but to understand the in the first conversation, if you want to jump to the next conversation, we're going to deep dive, and that's important.
So we're almost at the top of the half an hour, but I have still two questions that I would like to hear both of you. One is, how can startups, or should they, develop a relationship with investors, with potential investors? Is there a way to do that, to develop better, solid relationships? Is it important? What's your view on that, Pedro?
Well, of course, it's important, but I'll try to be realistic. Investors, I mean, funds tend, maybe it's a little bit different if you're focusing on a very vertical and on a very specific vertical for a very specific geography where you don't have many alternatives, and finding a VC, I mean, it's quite different from having a network or having somebody in the VC industry that helps you. My experience is that normally in the VC area, you can easily reach a lot of people, and normally, if you don't abuse, they will be willing to help. Giving mentorship is something that a lot of people are willing to do. Mm-hmm. So creating that first level connection with a few people in the VC area, I think helps founders, because it helps, I mean, validating the first versions of their decks and things like that. Also understanding what is the right time. Most of the questions that you, Anna, have made are important, but applied to a specific vertical project are more easily answered. And so it's going back to your question, it's important to have that relationship. It's not trivial in the sense that most VCs have very long days and they're not always available for when you need them, but creating a good relationship, being in events, try to create that start with a good pitch. Like João was saying, the pitch is just the beginning. If you have a successful pitch and it goes very well, you're not going to get invested because of the pitch, but the pitch will help you establish that relationship.
Pedro, and I will end with João. Just one to complement on that. Do you have any advice for our startups to get a good relationship with investors, or to get to be successful in their fundraising efforts? Just one important aspect that they should look at.
Well, it's a bit of a joke. They should be willing to take quick coffees and be effective in those quick coffees, because that's the I mean, you have to adapt to their agenda, and the way that you get to talk with VCs normally is when they have a very short time, and having that openness and that effective communication helps.
So João, any tips to get a good relationship with investors, and your final one piece of advice for the ones that want to fundraise?
No, again, there's many things structured. Programs like Protechting, even Fidelidade, it's one of the main sponsors of the Imagine. Programs like the FinTech House, where you got like lots of VCs that can mentor you. So there's structured ways with Calendly that you can use, even you know, and I would say you have to do a lot if you, especially in the early days, like you have to prove that basically what you are doing and the capacity you got to what you have produced with the limited resources. You are giving us evidences, 360 degrees, team, product, go to market, etc., that you can get to the next stage, and with money. Not at scale, but with the next stage, you can keep growing. So there are a couple of questions here at the chat. Tony was asking about pilots, about early sales, about going in programs like this. If it turns into real box and learnings and hopefully sales, effective sales, specifically in B2B, it's not easy to get the first sale. It's very hard, actually. So if you could do a lot with few resources, that's very, very important. Sometimes it's letter of intent, sometimes it's using part of the portfolio, sometimes it's sales conversations and market validation, even with a Figma. Just there's so prototypes, mock-ups, stuff like that. There's lots of things that you can do with limited resources. And that's my piece of advice. Try to do the most with the most complete team, with few resources, to show evidence that with more resources, you're going to grab that opportunity.
Very good.
Yeah.
I think we're at the top of the half an hour. Thank you very much, Pedro. Thank you very much, João. Thank you very much, Fábrica de Startups and Fidelidade. And by the way, my last piece of advice is do register in programs like Protechting, because that will help startups to get the fundraising that they need. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.